Hello again. As viewers in Britain will know this morning, militant Islam is flourishing in this country. To the outsider, Islam sometimes gives the impression of being an aggressive, thrusting, and sometimes violent religion, which is committed to overcoming other religions by any means necessary. Before going any further, we must bear in mind it's not so very long ago that Christianity could have been seen in precisely the same way. The terminology was different, of course. For instance, the European jihads were known as crusades, and they're viewed in a more sympathetic light today than the Muslim jihads, although they differed from them in no material way. Europeans tried to conquer Muslim countries in the Middle East, and they in return tried to conquer Europe. The tide moved back and forth, with European kingdoms being established in Jerusalem, followed a few hundred years later by the Battle of Vienna, as the Muslims tried to establish a kingdom in the heart of Europe. Every supposed horror that we see today in places like Afghanistan has a precise counterpart in European and British history. Remember how shocked we were to see the Taliban blowing up those old statues of Buddha or destroying ancient remains in Syria and Iraq, destruction by the recent caliphate. Think now about the demolition of ancient monasteries in England during the Reformation of the 16th century, or Cromwell's Puritans smashing up statues in cathedrals on religious grounds. People being executed for following the wrong religion happened all the time in this country during the reign of Queen Mary in the 16th century. I mention all this because we sometimes have a distorted idea about Islam, seeing it as an essentially warlike religion, different in some way from Christianity and Judaism. All three religions contain exhortations to violence and bloodshed, though. The real difference is that Islam has been around for 600 years less than Christianity. It's a relatively young religion. It's about at the stage that Christianity in Europe was in perhaps the 17th century, with the Spanish Inquisition and so on. All the signs are that Muslim countries, as countries, are no longer trying to take over Europe, as happened in the past, and that the violent acts are the works of individuals more than nations. I do not say that this is not desirable. It's not at all desirable. But it looks as though Islam is slowly settling into the same pattern as Christianity. At the moment, for example, many, perhaps most Islams take their holy book quite literally, just as people in Britain did in the Victorian era. But times are changing, and maybe in a century or so things will be different. I'm no keener than anybody else about suicide bombings and so on, but this kind of thing is rare and invariably the work of individual men, and not in general the work of the armed forces of a sovereign nation. This is an improvement on the past when it was official policy in the Muslim world to conquer and invade Europe. I think times are changing for Islam, and I think that if we hang on a little bit, maybe for another 100, 200 years, we will see Islam settle down into the same sort of milk and water religion that Christianity is for most people in Europe today.